Okay, girls, so this is the first video on your step 2. So we are in the booklet in page 1 of your booklet, okay? Page 1 of your booklet. So it starts with expressions. So I'm just going to recap. I'm just going to recap what we already covered before. I'll draw here. When we talk about expressions in algebra, we said that it was one or more terms adding or subtracting. Agree? So we said that, for example, in algebra, we were saying that expression could be, for example, x, or for example, 2x plus y, or for example, a take away b. All of these are expressions. Agree? Can have 3 terms, a plus b take away 2c, 4 terms. Okay, so we distinguish expressions from equations because these one, they don't have an equal sign. Okay, so this is what we call in algebra expressions. So here, here they're introducing expressions also. So it says the following all represent the number 8. So for example, if I write 3 plus 5, that's 8, agree? Or 4 times 2 is also 5. Or 13 take away 5 is also 8. 4 times 2 is also 8, sorry girls. 2 to the power of 3 is also 8. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. A square root of 64 is also 8. If I do these lines 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3 is also 8. If I do 3 plus 13, which is 16 divided by 2, is also 8. So all of these expressions represent 8. And we call all of these expressions, there are expressions of 8. Okay, so I want to make here a connection between what we have here and what we have here as expressions. So look at this one, we have 3 plus 5. Remember that a pronumeral is any number, represents a number. So I can write this one, 3 plus 5. I can also write it as a plus b, for example. Agree? Where a is 3 and 5 is b. So 3 plus 5. What about this one? 4 times 2. I can write this one as, for example, 4a, or whatever, d. If I said that 2 is d, agree? So this is also an expression. What about this one? Same thing. I could say, okay, this one is f, take away g. If f is 13 and g is 5. What about this one? This one can be x cubed. If 2 is equal to x, what about this one? A square root of 64. That could be a square root of y. So you see that all the things that we're writing here are expressions, and they're using numbers for all of these ones, but we can also use pronumerals. So we are talking about the same thing here, okay? Expressions with pronumerals or expressions with numbers are the same thing. It says here, come up with 5 different expressions for the number 6. So how else can you represent 6? And you can do that in your notes. By definition, an expression is anything that represents a number. Anything that represents a number. So we can use pronumerals to represent a number. We can have just numbers as what we had here. A representation of number 6 could be, this is a familiar one for all of us. That's an expression of 6 as well, okay? So anything that represents a number. This can include a pronumeral and things with pronumerals in there. So for algebra, because we're working on algebra, we're going to focus on these type of expressions, the ones that use pronumerals, okay? But it's important for you to understand that an expression is anything that represents a number. Okay, wonderful. So it says here, example 1. How many Freddos in this packet? The answer is x. It says, so x is an expression. It represents a number. It's saying there are x Freddos inside this packet. Now it says how many Freddos in 2 packets. So if I have 2 packets, okay, how many Freddos do I have in total? So I have 2 lots of eggs or 2 eggs. So that's what it has here. The answer is 2x or 2 lots of eggs. So 2x is an expression, it represents a number. Let's do this one. Example 2. Jim is 8 centimeters tall. I'm going to do this one here because this is the type of practice that you're going to do now. So we're going to start with examples here. And I'm going to, even though it's all written in your notes there in your booklet, I want to see if you were reading the example. Okay, so it says, Jim is 8 centimeters tall. So this is what I want you to do. I'm going to put this. Good. Okay, fantastic. So I have Jim is 8 centimeters tall. So you are going to write H is 8 centimeters tall. Wonderful. And then it says Alice is 10 centimeters taller. So I'm going to write here, I have Alice is 10 centimeters taller. Okay, I want you to stop there because a lot of students get confused, or a lot of people, I must say, get confused to this one. So I'm just going to read what it says here. Jim is 8 centimeters tall. Alice is 10 centimeters taller. So who is taller? I want you to take like in blue and write Alice is going to be taller. So if Alice is going to be taller, I know that this is what this is telling me is that whatever height, the height of Alice is greater than the height of Jim. Okay? And you see, I'm not reading anything else. Agree? Perfect? Sometimes people don't know how to do these kind of problems, and just by breaking it down and writing this information here will make it easier. I'm going to continue reading. How tall is Alice? So that's the question. The question is, how tall is Alice? So basically they're asking me for an expression to write how tall is Alice. So I'm going to suggest you do something. You're going to do an example, okay? And you're going to say, okay, if Jim is 100 centimeters, so this is an example. If he's 100 centimeters tall, how tall is going to be Alice? 100, right, please? 110 centimeters. Agree? And I'm continuing with this rule that I have. 110 is bigger than 100, is greater than 100. What did I do? I added 10 to what Jim had. Therefore, I'm going to do the same here. Look at my answer. Alice is, so I'm going to use the equal sign is, whatever Jim is, which is H, plus 10 centimeters. Okay? Very important that you practice how to do these kind of exercises, okay? Let's do number 2. So then let's do number 2. So number 2 says, I have here, okay, so it says, what does the expression x take away 10 represent? So I have the expression that I have is x take away 10. That's the expression that I have. If I continue with the same example that I have here, agree? So what do I know? So now we're going to think about this. Now, if I have someone, let's call it, let's say Miss Ochoa. Miss Ochoa is x centimeters tall. So Sophia, I'm going to write it Sophia in Spanish with an F. Sophia. So Sophia is going to be how tall? Sophia, if it says that Sophia is X centimeters, X, so it's saying that her expression is X take away 10. What does it mean? So now we're going backwards. What does it mean? It means that Sophia is 10 centimeters shorter than Miss Ochoa. Okay, wonderful. So here they have it with Sally and 10, and they're saying, okay, so in this case, what they have is that Sally is 10 centimeters shorter than 10. Wonderful. Expressions as answers. Sometimes the answer to a question isn't an ordinary number, but an expression with pronumerals in it. Like, for example, the examples that we just did. Use the following as a guide when giving an answer with pronumerals in it. So, for example, if they're asking you the sum of two numbers, x and 15. So we're going to do those ones here. So if they're asking us, and again, pause here to write these ones and check your answers, okay? So it says the sum of two numbers, x plus 5 plus 15. So I'm going to say for that one, my expression, my answer is x plus 15. Okay, then it says if you want, I'm not looking at at this column. I know that the answers are there, but I'm not looking at them. If you want, cover it, put a post-it or whatever you need, put out a notebook if you have them printed out. I'm just looking at the answer, and then I'm going to check here. When I add two numbers, 13 and I get, so that's B. So if I do 13 and I, or is an L? Maybe it was an L. So it's 13 plus L. This one here. I was an I, and here they have a Y. Crazy. Okay. Ah, no, here, 13 and Y I get. Okay, I understand. I misread that. So 13 plus Y. Wonderful. Now, C. The sum of two numbers A and B is. So it's going to be the sum of two numbers A plus B. Remember that the sum means addition. Wonderful. Let's continue here. The difference between x and 12 if x is bigger. So if x is bigger, I'm going to take away 12 from x because that's the difference. Difference means subtraction. Okay? Let's do D. The difference between 10 and y if 10 is bigger. So in this case, 10 is bigger, so I'm going to take away y from 10. Wonderful. Now, when I subtract 8 from s, so I'm going to write s like this so that it doesn't confuse with a 5. S, and it says when I subtract 8 from s, so I'm going to subtract 8 from s. I'm taking away 8 from s. Okay, let's do F. When I subtract W from 150, I get. So now I have 150, and I'm going to take away W. Okay, I just noticed something here, girls, and it's important for your notes because we're using algebra and pronumerals. It's very important that you symbolize your questions in red and with a D, so that you don't get confused that I have that this is a pronumeral. Okay, be very careful with your notes so you have very clean and clear notes. Multiplying and dividing. Okay, the product of two numbers B and 7. So product means multiplication. So the product of two numbers B and 7, we write this one as 7B. Every time in algebra, and this is about algebra notation, when you're writing a multiplication, you write first the coefficient and then the pronumeral. You don't write it like this. Okay, that's wrong. Okay, you write first the pronumeral and then the coefficient. And it's also, if you have more than one pronumeral, I forgot to say this before, like for example, if you have A, B, we usually write it in alphabetical order. So don't write it like B, A, okay? You can see it like this, and you will see it in some questions sometimes when they're asking you about something, but it's in your answers. Always get used to write it in alphabetical order, A, B, okay? Wonderful. So G, H. The product of two numbers M and N. So how do we write that? M and N. Remember that the product means multiplication, and here it's implicit that I have a multiplication between the two. I. When I multiply K by 7, so I multiply K by 7, it's the same as 7 times K. Beautiful. J. When I divide D by 7, so I divide D by 7. And when I divide 300 by T, so when I divide 300 by T, when I divide 300 by T. Wonderful. Okay, adding and subtracting. I'm going to do this one in the following video.